Yes, on Monday we discussed how a Maryland man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, was wrongly deported to El Salvador. The president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele, has said that he would not return Abrego Garcia to the United States, even though the Supreme Court said last week that the Trump administration must facilitate his return. Additionally, a federal judge has temporarily blocked the deportation of immigrants in Colorado that faced possible removal due to President Trump invoking the 18th century law called the Alien Enemies Act. With us now to give us the latest on immigration news is Tony Payan, the executive director of the Center for the U.S. and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Tony, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, can we define due process?
We have lots of questions.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues that the Trump administration seems a little bit short on due process.
And people need to, the easy definition is your chance to prove your case.
Yeah, you have to. There are 460 immigration judges. Everyone deserves a hearing. But I think in this particular case, Abrego Garcia, who was deported to El Salvador, that's one of the major issues. There was no due process. He was just taken away, deported, and he wasn't given a chance to appear before an immigration judge.
I don't understand how this is an abduction, that someone was just taken and sent away. And the farther part of it, or the next step in that, I just can't grasp why he can't just be returned. I'd even think no matter what's going on at the White House level, the irritation this story is causing them, just bring him back. Why isn't that happening?
Yeah, I think the Trump administration is digging its heels.
But to what end? What does this accomplish for them?
Trump would be Trump if it didn't do that, I think. President Trump, I think, is saying this is a big topic. This is a big issue. It goes well with the base. This is food for the base. And
I would
did
be
you
there
see
with
Grassley's Iowa conference? The base, Grassley's base, which is Republican, was not happy with this.
No, they're not, because I think the American public is beginning to wake up to the fact that the Trump administration is transgressing several red lines here. One is, of course, we're already in a kind of a constitutional crisis. We've been there before when he withheld funding, back to the Nixon era.
Mm-hmm.
The president is supposed to execute the laws, and if there is a budget passed by Congress, he's supposed to execute it. Now he's withholding the funds. That was a fight early in the 70s, and of course, the Supreme Court ruled then. President Trump is transgressing that. Now on immigration and kind of an expansive interpretation of the that act that goes back to the late 1700s. So President Trump, I think, is always pushing the envelope, and that's the big
Let me
issue.
go back to what you said, though, because he wouldn't be Trump if he did this. Right. But they actually admitted that this guy was wrongfully sent. If they had not said wrongfully sent, then I'd be like, okay, this is Trump being Trump. They admitted he's wrongfully sent. So even his administration is saying this man should not have been sent out of the country. So why don't they bring him? I feel like there's something else at play we just don't know.
Yeah, no, I think the real mastermind behind this is, of course, Stephen Miller.
Oh, Lord.
I think that's the guy behind that. I mean, if you saw the statements that he made at the White House yesterday, he was even saying that the Supreme Court was not really commanding the executive to bring him back. There's a different interpretation. He said facilitating doesn't mean anything. The verb doesn't mean anything. We're facilitating it by speaking to Bukele. But it seems to me that in the press conference yesterday, President Bukele of El Salvador and President Trump were already on the same page. So they probably spoke before that, and they said exactly the same thing during that press conference.
And they keep referring to a photograph of Garcia with an MS-13 gang member. They keep trying to say that he was an MS-13 gang member, but there's absolutely no proof of that.
Well, let the court decide.
That's
right?
due process.
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
So who is held accountable if perhaps, Garcia is not safe? Where does the accountability fall? I mean, here we have somebody who has been deported to one of the most dangerous jails. Where is that accountability?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of time. I think Mr. Bukele has forgotten that there will be another American president and there'll be consequences.
Well, we gave them $6 million to take these people, 234. So that's like about, I don't know, $30,000 per person. Why don't we just say, I mean, somebody should say, okay, we're not giving you any more money, or we're not giving you the money we owe you, or we want our $6 million back if you're not going to give us our prisoners when we ask for them.
Right, but the presumption behind that would be that the president would want to do that, and I don't think he wants to do that.
I want to bring up Andry Hernandez. You know who I'm talking about? This is a gay hairstylist. He was also just picked up in Milwaukee and sent to a Texas detention camp or detention place, and then deported apparently to the same place in El Salvador. Right. This guy had absolutely nothing on him. I mean, there was nothing. A completely clean record. He had 2 tattoos of crowns, under which one crown said mother, the other crown said father. And because of those crowns, this Milwaukee police person, who's now been fired, put him on the list. So he's gone. He's gone.
Yeah. And they're gone to a very dangerous place. I think people in El Salvador may feel safer because all these gang members are in prison, but this is a prison where people are being tortured, they're not being fed, they're being kept in very difficult conditions, and who knows what can happen to somebody like Hernandez, who's a young gay man, in the with all these prisoners, and that he could end up dead. Yeah.
I want to remind everyone that we are talking with Tony Payan, who's the Executive Director for the Center of U.S. and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. We're talking about immigration and what's going on out there right now in deportations. If you have a thought, question, give us a call, 713-440-8870. If I'm not mistaken, too, the White House has said this morning back to Garcia, he is not coming back to the U.S. That is their statement.
Yeah, I think Miller yesterday said that the Supreme Court had actually sided with the president because he gave a curious interpretation. First of all, the word "to facilitate" doesn't mean anything to them, right? And on the other hand, the way he read the statement by the Supreme Court was essentially telling it's up to the Trump administration. They have all the power to enforce the laws, and it's up to them if they bring him back. That's a very curious reading of the Supreme Court
this morning
statement.
Saying he is not coming back. That's it, period, end of sentence.
That's the end of it, yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
No, I think unfortunately, I think at this point the Supreme Court, I don't want to use the word co-opted, but I think it's pretty much there. They got at least a 7-2 majority. And so,
but they did say that the U.S. needs to facilitate the return of Garcia.
Right.
So they weren't taking the president's side there. Now that they've made that ruling and the White House is making a statement, he's not coming back, this is a standoff. How does something like this, if they're equal branches of government, who's ruling what?
Yeah, and this is where the Supreme Court, they don't have a police force.
Right.
They don't have anywhere to go. They simply issue statements. And this is a president who's not hesitated to be defiant to the judicial branch. And that's where I think the constitutional crisis can come in.
So, Tony, my question here is we keep hearing the word unprecedented times. Looking at immigration within our country, is this new, or is this the first time we're seeing this type of interpretation of the Constitution and looking at these type of deportations, or is this something that has happened before in the past?
Yeah, I think it's happened before. We have to go back to one instance. The 1930s, when 500,000 Mexicans were deported to Mexico, back to Mexico, because of the Great Depression. There were no jobs. And many of these 500,000 folks that were sent back to Mexico in the 1930s were actually U.S. citizens because they were born in the United States. And the 14th Amendment is very clear. If you're born in the U.S., you are a U.S. citizen. So citizens were deported to Mexico in the 1930s. And, of course, we have to remember the Japanese who were interned in Nevada, who were also U.S. citizens, and they were picked off and then sent to that particular camp in Nevada with essentially no due process, no rights, with the application of this particular Alien Enemies Act. So it's happened before in history. We've seen it many times. So we have a history of it in the United States. We have a controversial relationship with immigration. So hopefully, we'll get back to some normalcy where it won't be the president against the Supreme Court.
You're hearing from Tony Payan. He's executive director at Center for U.S. Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute. We have a call on the line at 713-440-8870. It is John from Richmond. John, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, I'll turn down the radio. Bear with me. My biggest fear is that Mr. Abrego Garcia is dead and that the administration is obfuscating because they know this, and they have no interest in the rule of law because if you look at Mr. Trump's past, he's never abided by the rule of law. He makes it work for him, for his purposes only. And I'll take my comment on it.
Yeah, John, thank you for that. A couple little notes on it. First of all, yes, this isn't the first time that has been speculated. Also, Abrego Garcia was from El Salvador originally. There was talk also that these aren't just random people that were sent to this prison, that a list had come from El Salvador of which people they would take. And if this name was on that list, there may be something else at play there. But we also have the senator, the congressman, who's on his way down to El Salvador now to see him and see his condition.
Senator from Maryland.
Senator.
Jennifer's on the line from Clear Lake. Jennifer, what do you have to say?
I was wondering, since they're not getting a lot of movement in like a criminal law sense, would his family be able to sue either the Trump administration for mistreatment or the Fox, et cetera, for libel, since they're saying a lot of things about him that have never been proven in a court of law or even supported by facts?
I don't know if Tony's the right person to ask. What do you think?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a political scientist, but it is quite possible. I mean, administrations get sued all the time. The problem with the Trump administration is, of course, that it doesn't matter if they get sued or not. The Supreme Court has already said exactly what they have to do, and they're not doing it. So,
this almost, given what our last caller said about fearing that this man is already dead, this is almost a George Floyd moment, I think, that outraged the country. People protested. I think if there's anybody that we can go to, since the courts have let us down, it's our congresspeople, our senators, and our congressmen and women, regardless of party affiliation, and demand that they do something about this. So if that's the only place we can go, that's the only branch left, can they do anything?
Well, not really. I mean, they don't have the power. They can issue the ruling, of course, but if there is defiance on
But they control the money, supposedly.
Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, the most they can do, I guess, order the arrest of a functionary, a particular bureaucrat that's not fulfilling the order if there's a name or something like that. But they don't have a police force.
Couldn't they put pressure on the administration? Look, our constituents are saying they're not going to vote for us if something's not done about this.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the judge up in New York as well issue a particular ruling, and yet she was furious. Zizi, I think it was her name. She was furious because the administration was essentially ignoring her orders. And they do it. They do it all the time. And there's very little the judicial branch can do. They just don't have the power of enforcement, so to speak.
Well, now she's asked for more documentation. She wanted more presented yesterday, and they did not present anything that they were supposed to, and she wants more. So I think, to your point, the more that she can open up what the process was, she wants to see the contract signed. She wants to see the documentation. I'm thinking then the outrage, if there are things in there we may assume we're going to see of the American people, will then feed back to Congress, and that could then push that more forward. Because there's a belief out there, he was sent back, but, Garcia, he probably has some knocks against him. Maybe he is There isn't anything. He was law-abiding. He was here legally now. He had come in illegally, but he had a status that allowed him to be legally in this country. And so there was no reason for him to be sent. He had never been. He was picked up in a parking lot of like a Home Depot where he was looking for work. That's what they picked him up for, was his crime.
And I think for most Americans, this sounds ludicrous. And so I think a lot of people are thinking to themselves, there had to have been some kind of connection. Where there's smoke, there's fire. It is ludicrous.
Well, Andry was doing nothing, the gay hairstylist. He was just picked up.
Oh, that other activist who showed up for his citizenship interview, I think, and it was also taken. I mean, I think the Trump administration is pushing the envelope here because they want to test the ground. I mean, the president himself has suggested that these are foreign citizens, okay, and there's a point to it. I mean, you could potentially concede that. But what the president has said already more than twice is that he's testing the waters to see if you can deport U.S. citizens, which would be unconstitutional. So I think the president
is calling them homegrown.
Right.
So my question then is, Tony, you said this has happened before. How is it happening again? If this has happened in our history, how is it happening again today?
It's a political issue. I think every once in a while people get convinced that things have gone wrong so badly that they want a strong hand to set things straight. It's difficult to figure out why Mr. Trump, I think, convinced so many Americans that there was something so wrong with the country that he needed to come in and straighten everything out. Really, we're not in bad shape. Not as much as they think we were.
And what is our current right now landscape of immigration when we're looking at currently? I mean, don't we have like the lowest numbers of people coming into the country right now?
Yeah, that's a really very good point. Look, I was just in El Paso, because I have a house there and I go there every so often to spend the weekend. And I can tell you, I went over to Juarez and I asked some of the activists what's going on with the shelters across El Paso, and they said, well, they're closing down. There used to be as many as 32 and then 25, and now very few. And so, the issue at the border is not the problem. And the Trump administration, to be sure, if you look at the numbers, I saw them just a few days ago, is deporting fewer people than Biden did. Why? Because they're not having as many deportees at the borderline. They're actually having to go around the country and try to find them, to detain them and then deport them. So the numbers are down.
So much to this case. I'm sure you'll come back and talk with us more. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.